Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I thank the Attorney General for the time that he's spending here today and the fact that he waited for us to come back from the vote. I wanted to come over here despite the fact that I'm chairing a subcommittee of the Financial Services Committee because I want to talk about mergers. I spent an awful lot of time on the Comcast-NBC merger, as you and a lot of people know. And I'm concerned. I'm concerned about consolidation. But, Mr. Holder, it appears across all industries, the antitrust enforcement under the administration, under this current administration, does not appear to be much different from the previous administration's kind of rubber-stamped approvals of multiple mergers and consolidations. The mergers of Ticketmaster, Live Nation, Continental United, Southwest Airtran, Comcast NBC, and Google ITA have all been approved by your antitrust division. It appears that the antitrust division is chartering new territory and positioning itself as more a regulator than a legal enforcement agency. The consent decrees from the Comcast NBC, Google ITA, and other mergers attach conditions that temporarily require DOJ monitoring and enforcement actions if breached. In my estimation, it takes more resources for DOJ to regulate through the judiciary than to simply block or order divestiture when appropriate. Is regulating through consent decree in areas such as competition over the internet and tech industry really the most effective, efficient, and transparent way to create rules of the road for merger reviews? That's kind of a dual question here. I just want to understand where you're going over there with.
Well, I think the antitrust division is tough on enforcement where it finds violations of the antitrust laws, and I don't think that those consent decrees, those conditions that were placed on those mergers are insignificant. The antitrust division doesn't go into this with the notion that we want to try to find a way in which we make a merger occur. You look at the antitrust laws, apply them, and then make a decision as to whether or not a merger can go through, or are there ways in which a merger might be constructed that it could. But we don't go into it with a presumption or a mindset that we want to make mergers occur. And I think that we have, through the leadership of our Assistant Attorney General, I think we have been appropriately aggressive.
Have you denied any since you have been there?
Let's see. I can probably get back to you with that. I'm not sure.
Well,
I can tell you
let me just register this. I spent hours upon hours working on the Comcast-NBC merger and raised significant, we think, questions about that merger. We understand how they operate now. I mean, we learned an awful lot about some of the agencies and programs that came in to support them. We learned about how they make contributions to nonprofit organizations. We were not talking about whether or not you contribute to churches and civil rights groups and all of that. We were talking about whether or not your company, your business is diverse, whether or not it's reflected in your management. We talked about whether or not the programming at NBC, et cetera, opened up opportunities for independent operators. We talked about some serious and significant issues. We got outplayed because they were able to roll in a lot of folks who had gotten contributions for their yearly conventions and their churches and all of that. And I'm just wondering whether or not those of us who are concerned about consolidation and mergers should just stop fighting these things altogether and allow them to come in with the conditions that they think play well, and you all just adopt those conditions and let these mergers go through. I'm really concerned about it.
Well, as I said, the antitrust division is taking its enforcement responsibilities seriously. I think, again, as I've said before, we are being appropriately aggressive and handling these matters in a way that's consistent with the law.
I'm going to ask you something that's very sensitive. At the time that we were fighting,
At the time of what?
at the time that we were trying to fight to get people to pay attention to Comcast and NBC and how huge this merger was, NBC that's owned by GE, CEO was being considered to head up the President's Business Council. Are you aware of that?
Was not aware of it at the time. I mean, I'm aware of it now.
Was that something that should be taken into consideration as you made a decision about that merger?
It should not have been and was not taken into consideration
It should not have been taken into consideration?
and was not.
Why not?
That is not consistent with what the enforcement responsibilities are of the antitrust division.
At the time that you were considering the merger, the key player was GE that owned NBC. And it appears that there was a relationship here with the administration and with GE that would cloud their objectivity about that merger. You don't think that's worth considering? Or you don't think that's in your mandate to consider?
No, we certainly shouldn't consider it, did not consider it. And you have to understand that the Justice Department acts when it comes to its enforcement responsibilities independent of anything that the White House might be doing with regard to...
Oh, the appointees on the FCC acts independent of the White House also. I mean, you don't... The DOJ and the FCC have nothing to do with each other when they're considering these mergers.
I'm talking about the Justice Department and its responsibilities when it comes to the enforcement of the laws that are our responsibility. We act independently of other executive branch agencies.
Including the FCC. You're not interacting with the FCC at...
I was going to say, there are instances where we will interact with other agencies if they have a particular expertise or if there is a reason for us to interact with them because of a particular statute. But when it comes to our enforcement responsibilities and determinations as to whether or not the antitrust laws were violated, and if those are the responsibility of the Justice Department, we act in an independent manner.
We're not talking about whether or not the antitrust laws were violated, past tense. We're talking about consideration of the request or the attempt to get the merger and looking at all aspects of whether or not this merger is in the best interest of, the citizens of this country, the people of this country. That's what I'm talking about. Do you, in looking at that merger, interact with the FCC, who have appointees by the president, and what is going on in the overall discussion?
Well, let's cut to the quick here. The Justice Department's determinations in that case or any other case is not affected by relationships that exist between the White House and the head of GE or anything like that. That didn't come into play in the determination that the Justice Department made in that case. That's the bottom.
And you're saying, and should not come into play.
And that's the bottom line.
Yeah. The gentleman's time has expired.